good afternoon, everybody. My name's Steve Philp, and I'm the director at Portugal Pathways and your host for today's exclusive webinar. It's my pleasure to guide you through today's panel discussion around Portugal's thriving property market as we go further into 2024. We'll be discussing what's happening in the real estate market in Portugal with our real estate experts, Paul, Anne, and Jerry. And I'll introduce and give you a bit more background on them in a minute. And they'll be providing an insider's perspective on the matters impacting the property market from a buyer and investor's perspective, as I just said. We will also be discussing Portugal's strong appeal to international investors, as we're already seeing another year of significant demand over supply, which continues to drive Portugal's thriving real estate market despite new government initiatives to support the first-time buyers market. I'm just going to quickly load a slide because I just need this just to reference some of the points. So bear with me 2 seconds. So I just want to sort of set the scene for you really by sharing with you some of the statistics on the Portuguese property market based on data from the Portuguese National Statistics Institute, which revealed an impressive 12.8 increase in the average house price in Portugal year on year, making this the fastest rate of growth since 2010. Also, according to a new report from Property Market Index, who are an international research platform, the Algarve region, along with various parts of Lisbon and the surrounding area, has witnessed the most significant price growth, with house prices soaring by 15.1% in 2023. And Portugal's property market is also outperforming the rest of the EU. It's tracking at 1.7% decline this year, whilst Portugal is still forecasted to grow by 5.8%. As many of you might be aware, Portugal's appeal to affluent expats and international investors has been increasing despite recent changes to the Golden Visa and NHR tax regime. And today we'll discuss why Portugal is continuing to prove such an attractive place to live, as well as own or invest in. There's proof of its popularity, with Portugal being named as the world's most desirable place to relocate and own a property alongside Costa Rica in the International Living 2024 report. Now I'd just like to introduce to you our panelists today. I'll just go to this slide so you can see them all. There they all are. So we have Anne Brightman. So Anne is the CEO and founder of the Brightman Group, a boutique real estate agency with offices near Lisbon and the Algarve. Anne brings a wealth of experience in international real estate from the US and best practices to the Portuguese real estate market. Also joining us today is Jerry Fagan. Jerry is chairman at Decade Development Management, which is positioned as a premium development project asset and operations management entity known for its pursuit of excellence and creativity in its projects. Jerry is also chairman of Reserva da Luz, which is a real estate development located in Praia da Luz, and has nearly 4 decades of experience in the real estate and development world in Portugal, having created numerous projects from Porto, Lisbon, and the Algarve. Jerry and his team have seen many changes over the years, and he is ideally placed to join our real estate panel for today's webinar. And joining Jerry and Anne is Paul Stannard. Paul Stannard is the chairman of Portugal Pathways and has also been involved in more than $200 million worth of real estate projects in the last 4 years alone, and also acts as an advisor to a number of research companies aligned to international real estate markets, including Portugal. So thank you guys for joining us today. Now, I just want to have a quick note to everybody who's watching, everyone's in the audience. Today's webinar is being recorded, and this webinar will be shared with you following today's webinar within the sort of next 24 hours or so. And also, please don't forget to share your thoughts and comments in the chat. We also will have a Q&A segment towards the end of today's hour-long webinar. So please leave those comments and questions in the chat for us. If we don't get around to answering all of those today, because we do tend to see a lot of engagement on our webinars, we will take those offline, either get back to you individually, or we'll put those answers up on our website. So yeah, please populate that chat for us. As I explained earlier, Portugal has seen a significant growth in the last year, and as reported in the recent report from Property Market Index, Portugal's property market in 2024 has already demonstrated that it's outperforming the rest of the EU. Now, I want to ask the panel their views and get their forecasts on Portugal's real estate market as we move further into 2024. And I'm going to start with you, Jerry. So can you share with us what you're seeing? As I know that you have recently finished a development in Lisbon that's sold out, and you have other projects going on in the Algarve. So what are you seeing today?
Okay, thanks very much, Steve, for the introduction and kind words and so on. Firstly, just dealing with the latest project in Lisbon, I think that it's true to say that there are many market sectors, if you like, in Portugal. This market sector that we looked at was the middle to upper market for local level market. It's called area residences. It's in Alta Lisboa, over 300 units, and ranging in price from about 400,000 to 850,000. And this project was probably delayed by 12 months, mainly to do with COVID and some planning issues resulting from COVID, not having staff in place and having to deal with everything in a different way and through a different portal. But having said that, it's sold out, it's completely constructed. It has withstood COVID, the war in Europe, if you like, the planning delays, inflation in the construction side, and interest rate hikes. And every one of the 300 units is sold out. And at this moment, over 50% have gone to deed, and we expect the other 50% to go to deed by the end of April. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us that there's a great demand, and we all know from reading all the various reports that demand completely outstrips supply, almost in every one of the market sectors. Now, I suppose also it's important to note that in Portugal, the mortgage supply situation has remained quite fluid, and there is mortgages available. And I was just looking at Euribor, and it ranges from 1 week to 3.882 to 12 months at 3.6, which is meaning it's trending downwards, meaning that there's going to be probably, you can start to see some interest rate changes towards the end. And the margin for banks is a modest 0.7 or up to 0.9%. So the cost of money, if you like, in that middle section, and indeed for anybody, is a little bit cheaper than it's been generally throughout Europe. So it's good. And then, of course, the mortgages are available with an LTV of about 90% to Portuguese national market, NHR 80%, and for other foreigners, which we'll talk about later, about 70%. And there's a vibrant market in relation to that. That market will continue to grow because if you look at the stats, you'll see later 22,000 properties created in last year. That needs to be up around the 57,000 mark to actually be able to cope with demand. Some changes that the government made in terms of allowing commercial property to be now brought into the residential sector will help, but it'll take time to catch up. But what it means is that there's going to, for the future, the prices are going to maintain and probably continue to grow. So I think in that general market, there's good news, if you like, in terms of investors or in terms of people wishing to purchase, get the right product. In the Algarve, where we have a big presence and have done Over the last 20 years, we've had over 2,000 units developed in the Algarve, and probably in the high end, and again, high specification range. But all of those properties have been fully sustained, if you like, during the period. They're still profitable in terms of those that invested in them, and indeed they still provide great satisfaction to those who spend holidays. And a lot of people over those 20 years have come and retired here and utilized our property.
That's great, Jerry. I mean, that is, that's a real detailed look at, obviously, from your perspective. I'm really keen to get Anne's thoughts on this as well. And what have you seen at the start of 2024? What sort of caught your eye, and what trends and where do you think the market is developing towards?
Well, I pretty much agree with everything that Jerry said. My forecast for 2024 is that there is going to be continued demand, because historically the data is showing a trend of rising real estate prices in Portugal over the past few years, and I do not see that changing, although it really does depend on the region and the property type that you're looking at. But the demand for both domestic and international buyers, especially high net worth individuals looking for investment opportunities or residency, it's going to keep going. It's going to remain stable and probably keep going up. We'll probably see price fluctuations as prices continue to go up in prime locations due to limited supply and strong demand. But that said, I think we should be on the lookout for any kind of economic downturn, because that might significantly increase interest rates and might slow down the price growth. And as far as investment opportunities, I think the market still has attractive opportunities for investors, especially in the luxury segment. And regions outside the major urban centers like Braga and Santarém and the Gold and Silver Coast along Ericeira, Nazaré can still offer really good returns.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you. That's right. Paul, have you got anything coming behind Anne and Jerry on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can get away from the main point, which is the supply over demand thing. So when we look at all the research that we've done across international markets, and then you compare that with Portugal, what's really driven that demand over the last few years is Portugal's popularity, for a start. The lifestyle, what it's bringing. I mean, if you take the UK alone, I think 3,000 millionaires have left the UK in recent years. And if you've got places like Portugal that have always been very strong with international markets like the UK, Ireland, America, Canada, South Africa, it offers such a rich environment, with the supply and demand issue, and the fact that build quality, which perhaps Jerry can talk a little bit more about, build quality has been rising and rising and rising. That middle to top end, really, you're not just buying holiday homes now, you are buying, some of the best built specifications that you're going to see across Europe. So yeah, that's my take.
Steve, just one other thing about the Algarve, and me in my latter years, I've decided that I'm going to spend quite a bit of time in terms of the luxury market in the Algarve, and I've got a few reasons for that. Our Reserve de Luge project is a specific project that sort of brings everything together, and it's something that we're concentrating on now in the Algarve. It's more a holistic approach to investment that we're trying to see there, and I know we're going to talk about that later, but I think it's important to say that there's a new philosophy, if you like, in the luxury market. People have earned an awful lot of money very hard. They have got a bit of money to spend. They won't be squirming or scrimping, and they won't be too worried if there's a a 0.5% increase in the rate of interest. But the one thing that we need to do, and I think as an industry we're changing, is that we need to show the people that there is a great holistic approach to the whole sector now in Portugal. Everything from ensuring that architecture looks after the needs when you get a bit older, when you need to have healthcare that is there and available in the location, and so on. When you need advice on what property to insure, different things like cars and so forth. So all of those things, there needs to be a complete and holistic approach to allow people to actually live out, if you like, the dream, rather than just offering and selling a property and a dream. It's actually to be able to allow them to live out the dream, and that's something that we, as our little company, will be focusing on definitively over the next number of years.
But as you said, Jerry, we're going to be moving on to the whole holistic approach and how that is sort of being integrated now into the marketplace. I don't want to spend too much time on this next topic, but again, I think we should just sort of mention it and talk about it. And just to switch tack a little bit, I just really want to get just top line views really on the recent initiatives set by the Portuguese government through its housing bill. I just really want to get some feedback from the panel, and for them to share their thoughts on what impact it might have or it might not have in the short or medium term. Anne, have you got any thoughts or any sort of takeaways from that?
Well, I think on a positive note, for licensing and construction delays, the bill aims to speed up licensing by penalizing the council governments that are delaying the issues that are licensed for developers and for missed construction deadlines. So I think that could lead to a faster turnaround in the availability of new housing projects. And maybe overall, I think it could lead to increased housing availability, maybe more affordable rental options.
Absolutely. Jerry, Paul, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, before the golden residence permit and then NHR and all of these tax incentives and so on, in 20 years we sold close to $1 billion in property. So it had, in inverted commas, it was living in Portugal, it was the benefits of Portugal, it was the great weather, all of those things, the outdoor facilities, everything else that sold Portugal, and this was an additional benefit, if you like, that came through. All those benefits are not gone. You still got the D2, D7. You've got various other ways of doing it, and Portugal Pathways know more about all of those things than certainly we do. But we know for definite that there are still incentives there, and I agree with Anne as well. One of actually people used to ask me when investing in Portugal, what was the greatest risk, and I would always say time. And when I say time, I mean that from the point of view of getting planning, getting your thing in place and so forth and so on. And for example, in our case, we just don't deal with something that hasn't got full planning permission, that hasn't got their infrastructures in place and so on, because you cannot, certainly up until recently, and maybe this new bill is passed, you cannot account for time and for the different cameras or councils, as you would know them in the UK and elsewhere, until they get their act together. It may be that this bill will actually have a very positive effect on the timing. So time is important, and that's why you have to deal with very experienced people in the market in order to save that time.
Yeah. So I mean,
sorry, Steve. The only thing I'd add to that really is obviously at the mid to high end, it's probably not going to have much impact, if any, at all. And in reality, government initiatives, they take time. And even if they're set with good endeavour, it's more medium to long term, because things don't happen fast in that environment. But it's great that, something is happening and something's moving. And if it can speed some of those processes, then that's a good thing.
Absolutely. It's great. It's great. It's great that the government is obviously beginning to address the shortage of affordable houses. But yeah, like you said, Paul, in the long term, it's unlikely to sort of impact the sort of the luxury market. Now, I really want to sort of focus a little bit more on the preferences of affluent expats and investors moving to and buying property in Portugal. And again, I want to put this to the panel. Sort of, are there any sort of specific locations or other property types that most affluent expats are looking for? I mean, Paul, you have experience engaging with a lot of international investors, wealthy families, and Portugal pathways. Could you shed some light on what these families or individuals are looking for when moving to Portugal? I mean, obviously, you've mentioned location and property types, communities, way of life, so on. But if you could spread a bit more light on that one.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of going on at the end of last year with, the changes that happened to the Golden Visa program, which, were positive changes in the end, because they gave more security to the investors. And similarly on the NHR, what's going on with that. But what we have seen a lot over this sort of first couple of months of 2024 is that basically none of these changes are affecting people wanting to come for lifestyle, all the reasons that they want to come. And the other thing that we're seeing is, we're in a very uncertain world. Portugal always comes up really high on the happiness index. It's a very secure and safe place, one of the safest places in the world and across Europe. And it has great healthcare. It has friendly people. It has, a rich background with people multilingual and very English spoken right across the country. And so, in terms of what we're seeing is that people want to come and they want to come for life. They're not coming, and that's not just people coming to retire now. We're getting a lot of inquiries in for entrepreneurs, and I'm not talking 65-year-old entrepreneurs. We're talking about younger entrepreneurs who are bringing their teams and building ecosystems, whether it's through the D2 Entrepreneurs Visa, whether it's through Golden Visa. And all of those people have significant property needs, but they're not looking for holiday homes. They are looking for that holistic approach that, Anne and Jerry touched on.
And do you want to sort of come in behind Paul on that one?
Well, yes, I'm not going to touch Algarve because that's really Jerry's area of expertise, but about 80% of our buyers are expats. A portion of them already live here in Portugal and have a good feel for the country. But one of our biggest objectives when we have people coming in from overseas is helping them identify the place that they are best going to settle into. And our main markets are really Lisbon, Cascais, and Porto, and Algarve, but Jerry can speak on Algarve. Lisbon, being the capital city, offers a lot of big city charm with lots of culture, history, modern amenities, and it has a really great general overall vibe. There's also lots of entertainment options, lots of cultural events, international dining. It's really become a very sophisticated city. And I think Lisbon still remains very attractive because compared to other European capitals, it still has a relatively low cost of living. Cascais is the suburban extension of Lisbon, and that's a big favorite because it's on the ocean, has magnificent beaches, and very much a beach lifestyle, but cosmopolitan. It has very good year-round weather, And the general cost of living, I would say, is higher than almost anywhere else in Portugal, and our clients need to be aware of that when they're looking. And then Porto is Portugal's second largest city, and it has a lot of appeal for those that are foodies and wine lovers because of its close proximity, of course, to the Douro Valley. And it's a really ancient city. It has tremendous culture that dates back to something like 400 BC. And when you walk through that city, you can still very much feel the culture. And all of these locations are growing at a very fast pace, and development is in these urban areas keeping up with the demand, I would say, but prices will continue to escalate, I'm sure.
So, Jerry, just finish off with you. I mean, do you want to talk about the Algarve and
Yeah,
what people are looking for there?
I think generally speaking, I think what Anne is saying, and like we've experienced this. We did some development in Porto in the past, and in Abidos, for example, Lisbon, and then mainly in the Algarve here. But like it largely depends on the individuals, and I think what Anne is explaining is right. You have to match, okay? You have to try and match the people. This is where this holistic thing comes in. Like, are they a couple? Is there an age? What's the age? Is there children? What's their sort of intention? What about health, working environment? Leisure facilities. What ranks with them, and try and then affordability is obviously important as well. I mean, affordability in this market, particularly the luxury market. I mean, it is an important thing it is expensive, but you get what you pay for in terms of and where it is as well. Also the business. So all of that then drives the next thing is the work environment, access, like airports. The road system is fantastic. Schooling is fantastic. Are you close to education if you've got kids? Leisure facilities, all those wonderful restaurants, bars, other leisure facilities that are there. Medical services. Some people have specific medical needs that they feel that won't be available. Some people think of Portugal, even still as a third world country, it's anything but. And having experienced the healthcare system for myself, having had 2 spinal operations over the last 6 months, the care is incredible. And it's second to none when I compare it to my own country, Ireland, or indeed that's happening in the UK. So it's sort of living the life that suits the circumstances, and that's where experts like Anne and presumably ourselves come in, because we can match that. That's our job, is to match that. So
I totally agree. That's one of our biggest challenges, is finding the right place for each client.
yeah, and people like maybe the oldie worldly as against spanking modern. You can have it all in the Algarve if you wish, but you need to know, and the client needs to know, is there pitfalls there? Is there benefits there? And that's what we have to do as the people that are selling the property, the dream, and this holistic approach. So for definite, it's all about an analysis, if you like, of the circumstances of the people concerned.
Just picking up on a couple of questions that I just seen coming on the chat, one from Stephen and one from Sonia. Obviously, you've mentioned the Algarve, you've mentioned Lisbon and the surrounding areas. Has anyone got any thoughts on? I mean, Stephen's asking about central Portugal, and also Sonia there was just saying, are there areas that you should be maybe a bit more cautious when it comes to sort of investing or relocating? I don't know, Anne or Jerry, if you've got any experience on that.
I have experience of enjoying wine trips and so on to places like Évora, and I know that's an up and coming place in terms of certainly the central Alentejo. You've also got fantastic developments over on Quimporto, which are being developed by one of the biggest development companies in Portugal. and you know, they're combining with golf courses and so on. And again, you know, there are people who work and live for golf. So, you know, there's plenty of areas, particularly along the coast and and around Lisbon, and also of course, along the Algarve, where we 42 golf courses, just along the 70 kilometer stretch. So it again, there are other areas. There's Braga is another area that comes up from time to time, and you've got some beautiful, if you like, towns that people will just instinctively like. But again, it all depends on what the client wants, you know, and in what area. If you go, for example, to Evra, you are in the middle of the country. So now you're an hour and a half from Lisbon Airport, and you're an hour and a half from Faro Airport, and you're about 50 minutes, 50 minutes from the coast. Great motorways, great ability. There's a lot of activity goes on between Evra and the coast. You've got Zambrugero, you've got Alge, you've got all of those areas up along the coast there. But it largely depends on what the client would like out of life, you know. They may want something, yeah, they want something quieter. They want something more rural. That's all accommodated. One of the things that you'll see when you come to Portugal is that it's not by any means overbuilt. So even when you come to the Algarve, and you know, outside the conurbations of when you go out to Cascais and beyond Cascais, you know, Estoril, there are beautiful areas there that are not overpopulated. So that there are, it depends. It just depends on what the client wants.
Absolutely.
Steve, I was going to, you know, chime in a little bit here.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, Portugal Parks works with lots of partners, you know, like Anne and Jerry. And I think the key to it is, and we get, you know, our inbox, we get inundated with people don't know what they don't know. And reality is there isn't a one fits all. It is about finding the right partner that's gonna go with you on the journey, that's gonna be an extension of you and your family. Because when you get into the conversations, people go, well, I think I want to be here, but they don't really know enough about what here is, really. So that's why it's truly down to having a partner that basically becomes an extension of your family, because it's a whole life thing. And from an investor's point of view, for those like, you know, like the property market index report that was published a few months ago about the hotspots in Portugal, you know, some of them are obvious because they are obvious. But others, what's happening, if you take the Golden Triangle in the Algarve, other areas that maybe weren't as fashionable as they want, as some of those, are now seeing the benefits because people can't afford some of those places. They can't buy the land. They can't get exactly what they want. But they can move to a neighbouring area that basically is now coming up. You know, Jerry might a comment on Faro, which, you know, I've had a number of people comment to me about that as an alternative, or some of the areas adjacent to it, to the Golden Triangle, yeah, for instance.
That's true. It's a supermarket. It's a fantastic market there because, not alone that. I mean, go down to Oliao, Tavira, you know, move your way down the coast there. There are definitely alternatives there. There's the Verde Beach resort and so on. There are any amount of alternatives, if you like, and again, as you quite rightly say, Paul, it's about giving direction, and from our point of view, it's about complete honesty. If we don't know about the product and we can't find out about it, we're not going to sell it, and we're not going to peddle it to anybody. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to know the client, and again, if there's something else, I have many clients that have passed on to some of my colleagues because it's not the market that we're in. It's not what we're doing, and there are other people better suited to do that. I prefer to have a very satisfied buyer that in the end comes back and says thank you, for recommending me into that or whatever. Obviously, I'm very happy if they're happy and content and have their new life with something that we've developed. But it's not the way. The way is to get a happy customer for Portugal. This is the way that I have ran my business over the last 25 years.
That's great.
I see, Steve, there's some number of different people coming in about the chat about, who's going to take me on this journey. And one of the things that Portugal Pathways prides itself with its partners is that, we make sure that they have the same values as we have. So, there's a comment from Kevin asking about, investment values in Portugal. They do seem strong, etc. But what about the legal nuances? What about the tax considerations? What about the cultural considerations? Well, we'll have experts on our team and partners that will have experts, and we'll share those relationships. And as Jerry said, and I'm sure Anne would agree, at the end of the day, it's all about doing the right thing, because that's how you build trust in your and that's how you create value in everything you do. The days of the Wild West, sales approach, isn't going to fly with anyone with half a brain cell.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm quite conscious of the fact that we are getting lots of chatter in the chat, and we've still got quite a bit to get through. So I really want to sort of push this on. But thank you. That was really interesting to hear, about some of the more popular resorts, but also to get an insight into some of those up and coming ones. Now we mentioned
Steve,
this.
I'd just like to mention very quickly that up and coming places in my sector have really been Madeira and Ponta Delgada, and because of the fact that there's still the potential for them to be available for golden visa, and we're seeing big growth spurts in both those areas also. Excellent quality of life as well.
They're two beautiful places, and absolutely incredible, and good for investment purposes, and very good taxation and so forth and so on. But again, Portugal Pathways can help, and you can help in relation to that. It's not our market; we don't go there, but it's a fantastic market. We had an association with the Azores many years ago, and that's an up and coming one for me in the future. So, that's something that we look to in the future. But more ado.
I want to sort of move the conversation on. We've mentioned this word a few times, holistic. So we know that we're seeing a more of a growth and more of a shift towards sort of holistic approach to living. The sort of days of real estate just being holiday homes are sort of long since past. And we're seeing more and more sort of sophisticated schemes aligned to people's holistic needs. I want to start with you, Anne, because I know you've got a sort of special interest and lots of experience within this. And I'd just like to obviously hear what your thoughts are and your comments and experiences related to this sort of more holistic approach.
In the last 3 years, I have seen projects in Portugal that I had never seen before the pandemic. And in terms of amenities that are being offered that really enhance the quality of life, these projects just keep getting better and better. They're designed by world-class architects. They offer world-class wellness centers, sports facilities, spas, hotels, shuttle services, beach clubs, and they're not located just in resort areas. These are for people that want to come settle here with their families or retire. And we have a couple of these properties, and they're actually located right outside of Lisbon. And there are also a lot of truly amazing senior living facility projects that offer tremendous value when you compare them to other major European and North American options. So I think Portugal is really a trendsetter in this area.
Jerry, what are your
And look, as I said
experiences?
earlier on, I suppose that I've realised for years, many years, the benefits, if you like, of living in Portugal, but none more so, as I said, over the last number of months when I needed medical care in a big way, and I received that, and it certainly brought to mind, and there are plenty of availability, and indeed in the pipeline there's a number of excellent. I studied this whole concept of age living and so on in the States a few years ago. We went down to Georgia and we had an interest in down in North Carolina. So I sort of learned about this, and now there are people bringing that to fruition. So what I'm saying is that Portugal now has got the whole ambit to be able to have this holistic living. It doesn't only mean that you've access to health. It also means that you pay attention to the architecture, you pay attention to what the project managers are doing, the construction, what's involved in that, the technologies that are available, and introductions to other partners, for example, on the taxation front, on what happens with a will, things like that. And all of those are very important because there's very beneficial things around that whole holistic approach that can happen to people that have investment and want to have investment. Local clinics, we've got all the time protocols with hospitals like the CUF, the HP. There's local care available. All of those things and the wellness, if you like, is all catered for. And that can all be wrapped up in this holistic approach and introduced to the potential buyer. So it's definitely something that our company is focusing on definitively, particularly in our new resorts, and Reserve of the Luge is one of those. So I think that it's there, and again, Anna's mentioned something that's very important and something that I didn't realize really until I started studying this, but the cost of healthcare in other countries, and I was totally surprised. For example, the cost of healthcare, of insuring healthcare, if you like, in places like South Africa is horrendous. It's nearly 10 times the amount it is in Portugal, and similarly here in the USA, as Anne will know, it's horrendous to try and insure your healthcare risk. But here, you've got top class companies all associated with fantastic hospitals, new technologies and so on that you can tune into. And we all have protocols with these people that we can introduce you. You can set exactly what you want. You can look after your family. You can rest assured that you're going to be looked after, and that there's no need, as there has been in the past, for people to go back to their home country.
Brilliant. That's great. I was quite conscious of the time, and I really want to sort of move through and get all of these subjects covered off and get obviously to the questions. Now, we talked earlier about supply and demand, and I'm sure this isn't going to be a surprise to any of you on the panel, that according to the GRI Hub, which is obviously Europe's real estate network, that reported recently that a year ago, Portugal built 22,000 properties, which is down from 190,000 properties built a year in 20,000. And this is a sort of continuing pattern for the last 6 or 7 years. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on why this is. And is this going to continue to drive demand in Portugal for buyers and investors? And finally, is it a planning issue or just a lack of available talent, or again, more sort of governmental challenges? Paul, I'm going to sort of bring you on this one first.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a theme since the start of the webinar about the supply and demand. I think there's a stat out there that for every one property built last year, there was 10 buyers. That's crazy. And when you've got a market that's very attractive, having been involved in nearly 200 million in real estate developments internationally over the last 4 or 5 years, it's the reality of that is if something is attractive from a lifestyle and holistic and all the and build quality, it's going to keep and it's going to be very hard in the short to medium time to keep up with that demand. And I think you're going to and we do need those other initiatives at the bottom end of the scale, which government have got to take responsibility for. But maybe Jerry and Anne can talk more on the talent that's required as well.
There's an enduring sort of structural supply scarcity and an enduring high volume demand. It's one of the classic economic situations. I mean, as a developer, as developers, and we being one, now it's time to step up to the mark. And there's been a terrible habit in Portugal of stop, wait, and let's see. And that happened quite a bit during COVID, even post-COVID, the war in Europe, the fact that there was construction inflation that had run up to nearly 15%. That now is completely tapering off. Last quarter was 1.3, which is way down on the expectations. And there's an expectation that interest rates are now going to lower. That means as well that we can get back into having some financing from the banks, who have been very reluctant to finance over the past year, 2 years, 3 years. So there's an emergence, if you like, of a long-term commitment as well from some investors who now see that with all of these things having been sorted. I should point out as well that the growth rate in Portugal was one of the highest in Europe over last year. It was 2.2%, and those of you from the UK know what's happened with there's a minus growth rate just in the last quarter in the UK. So what I'm saying is that, and I can't gild that particular lily, because it's actually mainly due to the fact that in Southern Europe, all of those countries are doing very well post-COVID on the tourism side. So that's what led to the growth rate in Portugal been the highest, if you like, in the whole European sector of 2.2. But that's going to endure as well. And I always say that when we get holiday makers, we get potential buyers, and interest, and I know that from the point of view of Anne, she'll talk about the United States as well, and their particular interest in Portugal as well. But I think that you are going to see an increase in the number of properties. Is there an issue with slow planning? There's always been an issue with slow planning, but I can tell you, if you're in Ireland or England, and I've operated in both countries in development, they're equally as slow. And it's a question again of having the right expertise in the right place, and ensuring that you have that expertise in your team, your project managers, your planning consultants, and so on, that can work through the system here. And once you have that, you need to spend the money to have the gain. And as I said earlier on, it's time that you have to see as the cost. So you have to pay something to ensure that you don't have that time.
Actually, that's great. I mean, I'm just looking again through the chat. We've had a couple of questions come in, and I just want to sort of push some of these questions into our sort of general conversation. What's it like for individuals who are looking to sort of build their own home? It's a question that Jeffrey in the audience has asked. I mean, it's quite a wide-ranging question, but I just want to get a general idea from the panel in terms of self-builds. What's it like? What do they need? Is it a particularly difficult landscape to navigate?
Yes. Is this right answer?
You're going to say that.
In a word,
yes, and very difficult. Let's try and navigate that in a little bit more explanation.
Totally agree.
First of all, if you have to buy a development plot, There has to be planning on that. There has to be a license on it. You have to then go and have a project on it. It's a very long-winded procedure, and you need absolute expertise to back you on it. So what you do is, and here's a plug for Reserve of the Luge. Reserve of the Luge has got plots that have got full planning permission on it, and we provide then a full executive team, a turnkey team that will deliver exactly what you as the buyer. You buy the plot, you get the turnkey team in place. You do exactly what it is. There's no issues with planning. There's no issues. The timing will be set according to your requirements. Obviously, you can only build so quickly and so on. But generally speaking, that's the only safe way to build something yourself in Portugal.
So, like we said before, having a partner who's going to be alongside you, at every sort of step of the way is, if you're going to attempt to go down that route, is the only realistic way of obviously forging ahead with that.
We have some clients that come along and say to us, I have a builder back in the UK or in France and so on. That's a good friend of mine, and he wants to build this property here. Well, no, he can't, because you have to have a license to build that property. And your license is on a scale of 1 to 10. And we wouldn't allow anybody on any of our sites that doesn't have a minimum of a 7 license to build. And that also then feeds into we talked before about the great construction system and so on that's here. That's all a process that has to be looked at and has to be seen to be, it's a great protection for any buyer. So, the system is here to be done, but it has to be done in the way that I just described.
Brilliant. Good advice. I want to sort of switch tacks a little bit and talk about the growing trend. Again, Paul sort of mentioned this earlier, the growing trend of entrepreneurs as well as investors bringing their businesses and ideas to Portugal, and sort of how this is adding another dynamic to the real estate market. Obviously, whilst the golden visa investment option in real estate has gone, we all know that, it's now being replaced with the opportunity to invest in businesses and regulated funds. And we are also seeing many entrepreneurs at Portugal Pathways bringing their businesses to Portugal. And some of these are having purpose-built real estates created or sourced close to where they are having their digital teams. Again, could the panel sort of give us some sort of views on this growing and emerging trend? Mentioned, Paul, that obviously we're seeing a lot of these come across our doorstep. So I'll sort of start with you and then go across to Anne.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to the holistic thing again. They want something that's relevant to their business, their sector. They want top drawer connectivity, not just in transport, but in terms of digital links. They want to know that they can house their teams and find the right mechanism for their teams. And they also want to make it a home for their teams. So all of these things are really important. But what we're also seeing, the entrepreneurs, they come, whilst they might invest in a golden visa tech fund, or whatever, they still want to invest in property when they come to Portugal, because they read the news. They see that there's a high demand and low supply. And so, we've got people, I've got a number of people we're dealing with at the moment from family offices who've got serious wealth that are basically looking at the holistic needs of themselves and their teams, but they're also saying to us, well, what projects can we invest in? What's going on off plan? What other projects? And people like Anne and Jerry, they're very experienced in that space, as are others. But that is a real opportunity to actually bring their business, but also, have a mixed portfolio of investments, both in real estate and other opportunities.
So and you mentioned earlier that sort of like 80%, I think you said, I think that was what you quoted earlier, of your clients are from overseas. And are you seeing this sort of trend in terms of entrepreneurs and investors coming your way?
Most definitely, especially with favorable visa packages for them. A really good example that I have of this kind of purpose-built model is a development company that we represent that's doing their first project in Santarém, but they plan to do this throughout Portugal. And they're creating residences for university students and digital nomads with sort of like medium to longer term leases. And it's a great concept because they're maximizing returns sort of by mixing the stability of long-term leases with short-term stays. So I think it's a great project.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think one of the things that always is a consideration about people bringing the businesses here, I feel anyway, and over the years, without, if you like, the situation of golden residence permits or anything like that, is that, you know, the client country, if you like, if they're doing well in their own country first, you know, if they feel confident enough that they can move and have a situation where they can run their business, whatever that business is, from Portugal, that's a big bonus for them, because most things now can be done through the technology and so forth and so on, and we have definitely found, certainly in Reserva de Luge, that I would say that of what we've sold so far, maybe 60% of the people are running their businesses from Portugal, and from that resort, because they're comfortable, they know what they're doing. It doesn't have to be run from the UK or from France or from Germany or whatever, and that's over the board. I mean, our clients stem from the UK, they stem from Ireland, Germany, Canada, United States, and probably the biggest amount, to be fair, is from the UK, as has always been the case, really, in the particularly in the Western Algarve and the Algarve generally. But generally speaking, if there's, like, you've got everything, you've got accessibility, the infrastructure, the technology, you know, quality of life, balance, education, all of those things that I mentioned earlier, and the important thing that you both mentioned and Anne mentioned is that they actually start investing in the local economy. They do invest in the local
economy. They embrace it.
Yes.
They embrace it.
And in different ways. And the other thing that they do is that, certainly down in the Western Algarve, where we're from, they also embrace the community and get very much involved in the community, which is a great thing, you know, and it adds to that wholeness of life, you know, that you're actually contributing something, as well as making a return and being able to run your business in this wonderful place. So yes, that's going to continue, and it's going to increase exponentially in my mind.
And one other thing, Joe, just if you take this audience, you know, had over 200 people registered, 75% of which were looking, you know, to buy in Portugal or extend what they bought in Portugal. But that was from 25 different countries. 25 different countries. You know, UK, Ireland, US, Canada, you know, the obvious ones, but it's all over, you know, Hong Kong, Singapore, you know, India, you know, it's across the board. And again, if they buy into the culture, as Jerry said, they get a far more enriched life.
Yep.
Absolutely. I mean, that was a really, I think, a really interesting, insightful sort of segment of this webinar. Now, I know that we're getting a lot. As everyone can see, getting a lot of questions and engagement within the chat. As I reiterated, we will try and get to as many as we can. I'm conscious of the time. Those that don't get answered, just to reiterate this as well, we will get round to answering those questions. If we don't get back to you personally, they will be on our website the next sort of 48 hours. Just before we get to a few of these questions, and then we sort of wrap up probably around 15:15. And again, for the audience, if you've got to go on the hour, just remember that this webinar in its entirety will be sent to you. So please, if you can hang around. We are going to go over by a little bit. Last question before I get to the Q&A. I just want to ask the panel if they could share their thoughts, looking at the current state of the property market in Portugal, how it might evolve over the next few years and beyond, and not just, obviously, we're talking primarily about 2024. So can we expect the sort of continued growth into 2025 and beyond? Anne, I want to start with you.
Well, I think we can expect some adjustments because of inflation and the rising debt costs. And the economy is probably going to be a little bit tighter in 2024, and we might even see a small price reduction this year, making it a really good time for buyers to start to move forward. But I also think another factor to think about is rental yields, like in cities like Lisbon and Porto that are showing all-time high investment opportunity returns. And these yields, I think, will kind of indicate that there is continued interest in the Portuguese market for both residential and investment deals. And my feeling really is that while the 2024 Portuguese property market might face a few short-term bumps due to economic factors, 2025 and beyond remains really optimistic, and the market's going to adapt and potentially offer great growth opportunities for both residential and investment buyers.
Jerry, anything to add to that one?
Yes, well, I think it's sort of in my stated sector, if you like, the Algarve. I think there's going to be continuing price resilience. Again, it's a question of there is quite an amount of demand over supply still in the market. I think the interest rates reducing, and one of the things about our market, the luxury market, is, as I said earlier, is those economic factors are not affecting somebody that's buying into, a 3.5 or 5.5 million property, because they've already made their mind up, if you like, in relation to that, and this is where, if you like, from our point of view, we want them to get value for money, and that's why we're going down this road of the holistic type investment in relation. But I think there's going to be I think the first quarter of this year there's a slight slowing, but I think second and third quarter we're going to see it rebounding quite a lot. In our sector, we're having continuing inquiries and we're continuing to sell. So from that point of view, it's a special product, but at the same time, it's very, very resilient. And again, I stress, once it's like if there's a disastrous election in the UK, as an example, which is every sign of that. And there's every sign that
not just in the UK, Jerry.
No, well, of course.
Yeah, I don't think you can underestimate that geopolitical. I was on a call with an American family yesterday, another one at the weekend. They're really frightened about polarization of their politics. You've got the same thing in many Western economies. UK, there's a lot of wealth that's frightened to death of a change of government. They're frightened to death of the government that's there. So let alone what's going to replace it. And then you go into other places like Hong Kong. I've got a guy there who's moving wealth and moved everything to Portugal because he doesn't know what the future looks like. And it's the same in South Africa. And Portugal does offer that haven of safety and security. And that will have an impact on supply and demand and house prices.
And sunshine.
Sorry.
And sunshine.
And sunshine, but not just that. It's that climate, it's that overall climate and culture. But the other side of it is, in terms of you know, you look at the tax system, you've got the golden visas and you've got all the obvious ones, and the you know, I know we've got 70 or 80 existing NHR tax holders who need to think and plan for their future tax plans beyond NHR and things like that, which we can help with. But you've also got a lot of people that are coming to Portugal. It has really positive hand-down policies. So inheritance tax is a very, very positive thing in terms of, you know, what you're going to do with the security of your future value. And, you know, we've got, you know, probably the biggest generational change in hand down of money in history coming up in the next few years. And so I think Portugal is perfectly placed. You know, it has its bureaucracy and it has its idiosyncrasies like everything. But I think it's in a perfect spot, really. And I think in the years to come, I can't see it slowing down anytime soon.
It's incredibly, it's a steady, very steady, solid market, and has been that way for 25 years. So, you know, and a lot of things don't rock the boat. And the fact that we're on the outside of the western side of Europe, and have interconnections then to the UK and so forth and so on, including a long-standing arrangement of over 700 years with them. It has this steady approach, and no matter what government changes or whatever that I've seen in 25 years, that steadiness, and it's always a slight growth. It's never like that and then that dips. You know, you that's what makes it, and great security. You know, for those people that feel they need security, what better place to come?
Absolutely. So I'm really conscious of the time, and I want to get to some of these questions. We've got some really good questions in the chat. Paul, you just mentioned that you know, a number of our audience are currently located in Portugal and are currently obviously on the NHR. So there's a few questions that have come in around the NHR, and one of them was it? I've got one here. Is higher taxes post NHR could impact what they can invest in property potentially. So that was one of the questions, Paul. So I mean, could you pick up on that, and then we'll sort of push off into the other questions?
If you go back to 2009 when NHR came in, you know, in the 10 years previous to that, which Jerry will be testament to, it didn't stop people coming. People don't come just for the tax. And if you've got the right advisors, they'll create the right structure for you to mitigate that. Now, we all have to pay some taxes. And, you know, I know it's been very generous, the NHR scheme, especially around passive income. But the government have brought in additional things to attract entrepreneurs. You know, the D2 entrepreneurs visa is really positive, very similar to the golden visa in terms of its residency benefits. And, you know, there's still great tax incentives for professional people coming through the D8 digital nomad visa or through the golden visa. But also you've got to remember that, you know, there are going to be tax, you know, you're going to have exit taxes from your home country through leaving in some. So you do need to have professional advisors that understand the European and Portuguese market, but also understand your home market. Yeah. And that's what we pride ourselves in at Portugal, is making sure that we work in partnership with your existing advisors and make sure that they're regulated and, you know, in the right place to act like you're Portuguese, because, you know, what you do with your money in Europe isn't exactly the same as what you do in the UK or the US or Hong Kong.
Okay, brilliant. So just going to the Q&A, I'm going to keep this quite short because we're already sort of 10, 11 minutes sort of over our sort of allotted hour, and I'm conscious of people's time. One for Anne and Jerry, and we'll start with Anne. This is from David in the US, and he's asking about holistic developments and asking for a couple of examples of developments in Portugal. And maybe some of the specific features that are attracting investors. Anne?
I think a good example of this is in Jerry's territory, the Umbria resorts in the Algarve, which a lot of people know about. It's a very sustainable development in just a stunningly beautiful setting. And it has a 5-star hotel. It has several restaurants on the property. It has a world-class spa, sports facilities. It has an 18-hole golf course. And there are several different options of properties that are available: villas, townhomes, apartments. You can buy into a hotel residency, and I think it really is an attractive investment that is focused on sustainable construction and the energy efficiency. Another one, there's a. Are you familiar with permacultural living?
I've heard the term, yeah.
Yeah, it's an agricultural approach to living and housing that's it's not about gardening techniques, but it really creates a path for regeneration. And we're seeing more and more of these projects pop up throughout Portugal. And then the cities themselves, like in Porto, the city revised its municipal master plan to prioritize sustainability and inclusivity. And it is actually allocating a percentage of their overall building area for affordable housing that will be focused on sustainable practices and sustainable building. So these sorts of developments really reflect, I think, a growing trend in Portugal towards sustainable and holistic living that makes it a really attractive option for investors that are looking for opportunities that align with their environmental values.
Yeah, I mean, additionally, if you look at the Algarve again, I mean, the very first sort of development that recognized everything got to do without greenwashing was Alm Verde. It's still there, it's still operating, and it's still very successful. There's a Comporto is definitely all of the resort in Comporto, including the golf course that they've developed, the incredible golf course that they've developed, is all based around it. Around that whole thing. Amendoeira Golf Resort, which I had a hand acting part to play in back the way. That's definitely one that should be looked at. And there's a new concept which is coming into play in the Ribatejo Valley, which is called the Life Plan Resorts. And I have to say, a most impressive organization. Probably built on the American model, I think. I mean, it's to be delivered yet, but it's there. It's in the making, and there's a great commitment, and there's great finance, and there's great investment behind it, and I can see that being very successful. There'll be many more cropping up. We would say, of course, Reserve of the Luge, naturally, because we have all our services are included in the village of Luge. So we're in the village of Luge, and we've got healthcare, we've got everything, wellness, spas, everything all around us, separate to the development itself, and of course the properties themselves with 4,450 square meters and 2,000 square meters of nice land around it, all south facing. That's the type of thing that you can get. So there's plenty of examples, and again, depends on the customer. Anne can direct her customer to that particular type of development, and similarly we can do the same thing with our customers.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Jerry. Again, I think we're now sort of quarter of an hour over. There's been a couple of questions around obtaining mortgages, and this one is from Aaron from Ireland. And he's saying, what are the typical interest rates and down payments required? Because he's heard that the mortgage market in Portugal was still strong compared with the UK and Ireland in terms of for mortgage approvals. So I'm going to go to Anne and Jerry, because I know that you'll have sort of experiences with regards to this.
Well, I can tell Aaron that it's a lot cheaper, first of all, than Ireland. there are less rules and regulations around it, and less an awful lot less hassle in terms of going. There are a number. I mean, there's at least 10 mortgage companies, included in there, the top banks and so on. I mentioned earlier on that it's looking like it's trending. Euribor is around about it is yesterday 3.648%, and a bank will or a mortgage lender will typically add to that 0.7 or 0.9%. So you're looking at, and this is trending downwards. So both in terms of margin and so on. So there if you add if you look at the biggest part of it, you're looking at 4.5% in terms of mortgage. The other interesting thing that happened and was good in relation to the recent legislation that was passed is that the banks are obliged to give you a fixed mortgage. So and there's rules and regulations around that. And just in terms of LTA for somebody Irish, you can, because you're in Europe and not necessarily the UK, you probably get an LTV, a loan to value of around about 80%. You definitively get 70%. So that's an awful lot more than you can get in Ireland in some cases. They're looking at combination of a salary of the two partners involved in the sale or in the purchase, if you like, and so on. So it's definitely easier, and there's again, as part of the partnerships, if you like, that we all have access to those different mortgage companies, and largely speaking can direct you to where is best at that particular time.
Excellent, thank you, Jerry. And anything to add on that one?
I just might add that the minimum down payment that is typically required for non-residents is around 30% of the purchase price.
30%.
And you can usually get variable rates starting at 3.5%.
Yeah.
So I want to sort of wrap up here, but before we wrap up, before we go, I just want to thank the audience that have stuck with us. 20 past the hour. And again, apologies if we didn't get to all of your questions today. As we said, our team will work on those questions, and if we don't reply to you directly, they will be on our website within the next 48 hours or so. Before we wrap up, I just want to sort of go around the room, around the panel, if you like, and just get a short sort of key takeaway from each of you to sort of summarize what we've sort of spoken about today. I know it's a very broad subject, but one takeaway that you'd have for the audience. I'm going to start with Jerry.
Okay, well, the takeaway or advice, if you like, that I would give to the audience is to obtain the optimum value, not only in financial but also in holistic terms. Deal with experienced experts that have the knowledge-led ability to get you what most satisfying living life experience that is possible in Portugal. Of course, we would naturally say that the people on this conference call as participants are those experts. So, but there are many. So that's my takeaway. Deal with the right people and that's where you'll get optimum value in terms of living in Portugal.
Thank you, Jerry. Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say something very similar to Jerry. It's having partners that you can trust and rely on, that can then introduce you to other partners that you can rely on. Because when you go into a new area, whether it's for investment or whether it's living, you want people that you can rely on. And Portugal Pathways, have made its business to make sure it's all about the connectivity and understanding the needs of the customers. And it isn't a one fits all, tell me what is the best development or what is the best thing for you, and taking into account all of your needs and requirements, because that's how you find not only a good investment, but that's how you find happiness and satisfaction from what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. Having a good, like we said, having a good team, a reliable team around you. Anne, what's your final takeaway for today's?
I ditto. I completely support what they said. And I think in this market, Portugal in particular, it is absolutely essential that you know who you're dealing with, you trust who you're dealing with. I mean, not the least of considering that in Portugal, you actually do not need a real estate license to practice real estate. So it's fundamental that you're working with a professional that can help guide you through this market. And my other takeaway is just that people are not moving here because of cost of living. They're moving here because of quality of life. It's an amazing country to live in. It's small, but it's extremely diverse. And if you're coming from overseas, it's very important to work with someone that's going to show you options that really you can identify with your lifestyle.
Brilliant. That's great. I just want to say thank you to our panelists. It's been a real engaged session. Apologies that we've gone over a little bit. As you obviously heard, that is a really sort of in-depth subject. I just leaves me to say again, thank you to the panelists and thank you for you guys for joining us. Don't forget to register for our next webinar, our Portugal Pathways webinar, Building Generational Wealth Whilst in Portugal. We'll be covering off capital gains tax benefits, succession planning solutions, inheritance landscapes, etc. That website is on the 27th of March. And again, it'll be at 4 p.m. So just leave it to say thank you very much, guys. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.